Let's open our Bibles tonight to 2 Samuel, chapter 20. Begin reading with verse 1. And there happened to be there a man of Belial, whose name was Sheba, the son of Bichri, a Benjamite, and he blew a trumpet and said, We have no part in David, neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse, every man to his tents, O Israel. Now I'll give you the background of that in a few minutes. So every man of Israel went up from after David and followed Sheba, the son of Bichri, but the men of Judah clave unto their king from Jordan even to Jerusalem. And David came to his house at Jerusalem, and the king took the 10 women, his concubines, whom he had left to keep the house. And if you remember the other night, I mentioned these 10 concubines were the 10 women that Absalom built a tent on top of the house and went into those 10 women in the sight of all Israel. We explained that the other night. But David comes home because he had been intimate with them, and then Absalom was intimate with them. Under the law of Moses, that was an abomination. And so David quietly put them aside so that they would, not be in a position, and so that he would not disobey God's word. So he put them in ward and fed them, but went not in unto them. So they were shut up until the day of their death, living in widowhood. Then said the king to Amasa, Assemble me the men of Judah within 3 days, and be thou here present. And Amasa went to assembly the men of Judah, but he tarried longer than the set time which he had appointed him. And David said to Abishai, Now shall Sheba the son of Bichri do us more harm than did Absalom. Take thou thy Lord's servants and pursue after him, lest he get him fenced cities and escape us. And if you don't know who Abishai is, we'll tell you that in a few minutes. And there went out from him Joab's men, and the Kerethites, and the Pelethites, and the mighty men, and they went out of Jerusalem to pursue after Sheba, the son of Bichri. And when they were at the great stone, which is in Gibeon, Amasa went before them. He was supposed to be there in 3 days. He wasn't there. But when he does get there later, he goes out in front, and Joab's garment that he had put on was girded unto him, and upon it a girdle with a sword fastened upon his loins in the sheath thereof. And as he went forth, it fell out. That in itself is a story how he deceived. But go on in verse 9. Joab said to Abishai, Art thou in health, my brother? And Joab took Amasa by the beard with his right hand to kiss him, and Amasa took no heed to the sword that was in Joab's hand. So he smote him therewith in the 5th rib, shed out his bowels to the ground, and struck him not again. And he died. So Joab and Abishai, his brother, pursued after Sheba, the son of Bichri. And one of Joab's men stood by him and said, He that favoreth Joab, and he that is for David, as if they were synonymous. They weren't, but as if. Let him go after Joab. And Amasa wallowed in blood in the midst of the highway. And when the man saw that all the people stood still, he removed Amasa out of the highway into the field and cast a cloth upon him when he saw that everyone that came by him stood still. When he was removed out of the highway, all the people went on after Joab to pursue after Sheba, the son of Bichri. For those who are not familiar with the story of Amasa, it's an interesting story. I'm going to be giving a lot of facts. I'm going to be giving a lot of names. So if you don't get all of the names, or if you can't keep all of the names together and keep them straight, I will be more than happy to give you a copy either of my notes or do a draft to show the relationships that I intend to show. As we look at Amasa, you'll begin to see just how terrible this whole entire family turns out to be. The first question is, who is Amasa? Well, he was related to a lot of people, and you can't read one verse to get some of these connections. You read one verse here, then you go over and read another verse, and you look at, okay, they both had the same mother, they both had the same father, they must be kin to each other. And so if you look for one verse, you're not going to find it in many of these cases. Who was he? He was kin to a lot of key players in the time of David. First of all, he was David's nephew. Amasa was David's nephew. David, well, let me read 2 Samuel chapter 17, verse 25. Absalom made Amasa captain of the host instead of Joab, which Amasa was a man's son, whose name was Ithra, an Israelite, that went in to Abigail, the daughter of Nahash, sister to Zeruiah, Joab's mother. Now, if you look at Nahash, Nahash obviously was the father of Abigail. Nahash was also the father of Zeruiah. Now, they have a brother who is not mentioned in this passage. Anybody think they know who these sisters' brother was? Anybody think they know who their brother was? Their brother was none other than King David. Now, like I say, doesn't say that here, but it also mentions David, who was it's got it all there. So David was the brother to Abigail and also to Zeruiah. Abigail was the mother of Amasa. Zeruiah was the mother of Joab, who became the general of David's army. And she also had two other sons who were Abishai and Asahel. Have I lost everybody yet? I'm getting some yeses. I'll try to print my notes out and show all of these connections. Their kinship is going to be very important when we get into some of the actual events. Let me see if I can break it down. We got David, Abigail, and Zeruiah, who are brothers and sisters. Abigail had a son named Amasa. which would make David what? All of you got that one. Uncle. David's other sister, Zeruiah, had Joab, Abishai, and Asahel. Joab became the general of the army when David was king. Now, if Joab is a nephew and Amasa is a nephew, what relationship is Amasa to Joab? First cousins, thank you. They were cousins to each other. And so as we go through, you're going to see one great big family feud. And I'm not talking about the family feud on TV. I'm talking about a family, uncles against nephews, cousins against cousins, and it's going to be one great big massive bloodbath as all of these families come together. So we can, when we study parts of Amasa's life of necessity, we have to see how that works in and works around with, Joab, Abishai, and Asahel. And of course, that's going to bring in David and Abigail and Zeruiah. And I think I said Abigail twice. Maybe I didn't get 12 out of 10. Maybe I only got 11 out of 10. But we're going to see this great big mess of a family. I was thinking, and I'll repeat this, but the old expression, blood is thicker than water. In many cases, that's true. As a pastor and in other churches, I personally experienced at some of the other churches where people that believed the truth, were taught the truth, stood for the truth, practiced the truth with everybody until it came to their family. And I agree to an extent, blood is thicker than water, but not in this family. This family was the exception. So we notice who he is. We notice what he did. Remember, and I'm trying to repeat this because I want you to tie everything together if possible. You remember Absalom, right? You all remember Absalom. Absalom was one of the kids of King David. Absalom is the one that raped his half-sister. Absalom is the one who led the rebellion against David, literally overthrew David, ran David out of Jerusalem, and forced David to live in the wilderness, while Absalom went into Jerusalem and proclaimed himself as the king. By the way, Absalom was another cousin in this whole mess there. So when Absalom rebelled against his father, Joab remained loyal to David. If you recall when, David's other son rebelled against David, Joab sided with him. But this time, Joab remains true to David. He flees with David. He's out in the wilderness with David. He is the same situation that David is. Absalom has come in, taken over Jerusalem, and forced everybody on David's side out of the city, except, of course, Hushai, which we looked at the other night. So Joab is loyal to David. Absalom was a cousin to Amasa and Joab. And for some reason, Amasa sided with Absalom. Now, for whatever reason, and sometimes you have to read between the lines, something was going on. Bible doesn't tell us what, but something was going on that Joab just plumb didn't like Absalom. Now we're talking cousins. We're talking cousins here. So Joab did not like Absalom. So when Absalom rebelled, Joab stayed with David, loyal to David. Many people think that's one reason that, when Absalom was hanging from the tree by his hair, and David had given strict orders, do not hurt Absalom. When Joab found him against a direct order, Joab killed Absalom anyway. Many people think it was because of this ongoing feud between cousin Joab and cousin Absalom. But Joab killed Absalom. Prior to this, we don't know much of anything about Amasa. But we read a second ago that when Absalom became king, he appointed Amasa, his cousin, to be the general of the army. And so Amasa led the army to the wilderness to find David and kill David while he was still out in the wilderness. We don't know what kind of military skills Amasa had, but his army was no match for Joab and his army. And so Amasa's army was firmly defeated. Absalom was killed. And now here is Amasa. What's going to happen? He personally, publicly rebelled against David and sided with Absalom. He went out into the wilderness to kill his uncle David. He was firmly, let's go kill David. Now his army's lost. What's going to become of him? Treason was grounds to be killed. Committing treason was in and of itself grounds to kill the rebel. But as a nephew, will my uncle put blood ahead of rebellion? Amasa's really in a quandary here. I rebelled, there's no question. I tried to kill my uncle, there's no question. And now I'm defeated. Will my uncle kill me? Or will he have mercy because I am family? What do you do when you chose the wrong side of an issue and lost? What was David's situation? Well, and I'm repeating this because I know most people don't retain what they hear one time. So I'm repeating some of it, hoping you will remember. When David fled Jerusalem out into the wilderness, the children of Israel felt betrayed. We anointed David king. David can't even stand up to his own son. David can't even keep his own son out of rebellion. David can't control his own son. And now David has fled and left us at the mercy of Absalom. And so the Israelites were very much hesitant to bring David back to Jerusalem and anoint him as king. He betrayed us. He left us. He deserted us and left us at the mercy of Absalom. And now he wants to come back and be king after he deserted us. And so there's a lot of hesitation there. The tribe of Judah said, hey, he is our brother. We will take him back as king. But the other tribe said, I don't think so. I don't think we want David back. And so a man, and again, we don't know anything about this guy, except when David is wanting to come back, the Israelites don't trust him. They feel betrayed. They felt deserted. So a young man named Sheba says, you know what? I hereby appoint myself as the leader of the northern tribes. And David, Judah, you can have him. We don't want David. I am going to set myself up as the ruler over Israel. Well, we had the civil war with Absalom. Absalom was killed. The army was defeated. Now we've got another civil war going on with Sheba. And I can tell already, I'm going to be typing out all these names and showing the relationships. If Sheba is not put down immediately, the second rebellion can be worse than the rebellion of Absalom. We've got to get on top of Sheba, and we've got to do it immediately. Now, David, who is upset with Joab, I just told you, what did Joab do against an absolute order from David? What did Joab do? Do y'all remember 5 minutes ago? Great, most of you. Joab killed David's son Absalom against David's direct order. Now, I know enough about military. As a private, you've got nothing. As a private, you're the scum of the earth. As a private, you get all the dirty jobs. As a private, you're the grunt. You know, you're the one that doesn't, you don't have anybody that you can order. So when a sergeant tells a private, do this, just a sergeant, he does it. If a lieutenant says do it, that's even double strong. You do it. If the captain comes along and says do it, everybody, the lieutenant, the sergeant, and the private must obey orders. Now imagine the president, the commander-in-chief, giving an order, if he had enough brains to give an order. I didn't say that. But imagine the commander-in-chief giving an order, and the private way down yonder says, I'm not going to do it. This order came directly from the top. You get the idea. David, the top man, the commander-in-chief, the king of the army, David gave a direct order, do not harm Absalom. So when David found out that Joab, of all people, had killed Absalom, David said, I'm done with Joab. He was very upset with Joab for disobeying an order and killing Absalom. And so David says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to demote Joab. I'm going to take his stars away. I'm going to take his commandership away. And I'm going to give them to, anybody want to guess who he gave the stars to? He gave the stars to Amasa. And he said, Amasa, in 2 Samuel 19:13, say ye to Amasa, art thou not of my bone and of my flesh? Yeah, I'm your nephew. But so is Joab. God do so to me and more also, if thou be not captain of the host before me continually in the room of Joab. In other words, Amasa, I know you followed Absalom. I know you tried to kill me. I know you led the army to hunt me and kill me, but I still trust you more than I do Joab. I hereby commission you to be in charge of the army. But there's a condition. You must gather the men of Judah within 3 days and be back here within 3 days to lead the army against Sheba before Sheba gets a chance to strengthen himself. You've got 3 days. You've got 3 days to assemble the army, meet me here, and go after Sheba. Well, the Bible doesn't say what happened, but something happened. And Amasa didn't get back in 3 days. So what do you think is going to happen? Oh, well, David will have to put Joab back. Nope. Nope. David put Joab's brother, Abishai, as the commander. Now, you've not only got a cousin versus a cousin, now you've got a brother versus his brother. Abishai was a loyal brother. And so when David made him the commander, he immediately turned everything back over to Joab. And then later on, much later, here comes Amasa with the army, and it's like, okay, guys, let's go after Sheba. Well, I'm sorry, you're late. We couldn't wait on you. And so Joab gets a chance, calls Amasa over, like he's, accepting him. My brother, are you okay? And he reaches over to kiss him like Judas kissed Christ. It was a kiss of betrayal. But when Amasa comes over to kiss Joab, Joab takes his sword, which incidentally had fallen out of its sheath and was on the ground. And Joab picks it up, and instead of putting it back in the sheath, he's still holding it when he goes to kiss Amasa. Only instead of kissing, he rams the sword under the 5th rib and kills Amasa right on the spot. Now, this is an interesting side note, but I read there in 2 Samuel 20 and in verse 12, Amasa wallowed in blood in the midst of the highway. And when the men saw that all the people stood still, he removed Amasa out of the highway into the field and put a cloth upon him And when he saw that everyone that came to it stood still, when he was removed out of the highway, all the people went on after Joab to pursue after Sheba. This is a side note. Amasa was dead, lying there in the middle of the street. Nobody would pass a dead body on the street. So Joab had them move the dead body over into the field, and he covered him with a cloth. How many of you have ever been at an accident scene where someone died in the accident? Looks like you and I are the only two. What do they do when a person is killed in an accident or drive-by shooting, whatever? What do? They cover them with sheets. Now, I can't help but wonder if Joab started the practice, because ever since Joab, this has been practiced down through the ages. When a person dies, they cover him up. If he's trapped inside of a car, he's trapped inside of a car, dead. What do they do then? They cover the whole car. They cover the whole car so that the dead body is not exposed to people that are going by. People would not pass Amasa as long as he was laying in the highway. Now, how does this affect us? What's all of this got to do with you and me? I thought of the verse in Proverbs chapter 18. In verse 19, Solomon said, "A brother offended is harder to be won than a strong city." What does that mean? It means when you offend a brother, and brother is not necessarily blood kin, but when you offend a brother and a brother is offended at you, it's easier to capture a city, a strong city in war, than it is to win back a brother that you have offended. Hence the phrase, that I'm sorry, family, you made me mad. I know people today who have not spoken to their family for 10, 20, 30 years because they offended them way, way, way back yonder. A brother offended is harder to be won than a strong, fortified, mighty city. Families can be a tremendous blessing. I'm thankful that God, in His sovereign mercy, God put me in the family that He put me in. I am thankful for that. My family has been a tremendous blessing. Now, I kid my wife a lot, and Thursday morning in their chapel out at the Answers in Genesis there, Ken Ham and the other co-founder called Kathy up on the stage. This is the employee assembly. And for about 15 minutes, all they did was, criticize Kathy because of being so old. How do you know you're getting old? Look at Kathy. That went on for about 15 minutes. family can be, and I pick on her a lot. I pick on her a lot, but I tell you, she has been one of the greatest blessings outside of salvation. Family, especially Christian family, should be a great blessing. Our church family should be a great blessing to each other. Now, like it or not, we are all kin. I was reminded of this the other day. I said something about, at least you're not kin to another person. And they said, oh, yes, I am. It's like, I didn't know you were kin to them. Yeah, we're all descendants of Ham, Shem, and Japheth, who were descendants of Noah. So we are all kin to each other. Plus, we're all brothers and sisters in Christ. So that makes us double family. And as a family, we should work to be a blessing to each other. Coming to church should be something that you look forward to. I can't wait to get there and see you folks. I can't wait to see my brother. Man, the world is a terrible place. I can't wait for our next family reunion. Because family can be a tremendous encouragement. I mentioned this morning, you may not be able to do a lot of things. Somebody said, well, I can't talk on the phone. Can you write? We've got cards in the coat room back there, free. The envelope is free, and we'll even furnish the stamps free. All you need is somebody to say, you know what, I can't preach, can't teach, can't lead singing, but I've got a sister in the church who is going through a difficult time. I can't do much else, but I can write a card and say, thinking of you, praying for you. Family should be a tremendous blessing, and that includes church family. But few things can get as nasty as a family fight. I'm not going to ask you if you've ever seen or been involved in a family fight, but I've got family on my side of the family. I've got family that absolutely will not speak to their own sisters because of something that happened 20, 30 years ago. And I always think, how sad. Both of them claim to be Christians. The one has tried to make up many times, but the other one is like, nope, you offended me. Wow, that's been more than 20 or 30 years. That was before we got married. So that's been over 50 years. She still will not speak to her own sister. And I think, how pathetic. How sad. Sometimes people in church get on the outs and outs with family members. Well, you know what? If you offend me, and I've said this, I have three choices. Started to say two, but I thought of a third one. I can ignore it. I can forget it. I'm not going to lose sleep over it and go on. I can try to make up with them. I guess I only did have two. The other one is I can stew about it. I can just get mad, go to bed, think about it, dwell on it, get angry over it. Listen, we're family. We're family. I've got some family that I'm not as close to as other family, but we as a church are family. And there's no room for the type of warfare that went on in the family of Amasa with his cousin Absalom and his cousin Joab and their uncle David. There's no excuse for that kind of infighting and warring one with another in family. How much less in our church family should things like that go on? I've learned that there are some people, it doesn't matter what you do, they're not going to like you. I tried my early years, and I still do to a degree. I like for everybody to like me. Anybody like to be hated? I mean, you just love people hating you. I try, especially in my early years, even now to a degree. And I've learned that there are some people that no matter what you do, they're just never going to like you. I mentioned Joab and Absalom. Bible doesn't say exactly why Joab just seems to have never liked Absalom, and when he got the chance, he killed him. But then I close with this thought. May we who claim to be saved, those of us who name the name of Christ, our theme, if you don't believe it, read the book of John, read the book of 1 John. As a Christian, our life is to model the love of God. Jesus said, love one another. He didn't stop there. How did Jesus say we are to love each other? We're to love one another as Christ loved us. Do you think everything I do pleases Christ? Spend a week with me, you'll find out I don't do everything that I should do. I'm human and I sin. And yet, in spite of my faults, in spite of all the things that I do, God never stops loving me. And we're to love each other just like Christ loves us. Will you agree with everything someone else does? I doubt it. Will you agree with everything I do? I know better than that. I hear about it frequently. Do I agree with everything? No. We're never going to be perfect in every aspect. But as Christians, we should never have that infighting. Uncle against nephews, cousins against cousins, fighting, killing, arguing, going back and forth. That should never, never be found in a church of the Lord Jesus Christ, who are commanded to love one another. How many problems could have been solved had they practiced what Jesus taught? Now, and I've got this written down, I promise this is the last verse. If somebody offends you, what does the Bible say? But let me narrow it down. How long are you allowed to hold on to that wrath, that anger? Anybody know? I'm not going to call on you. How long are you allowed in the Bible to to hold on to that anger before you are required to get rid of it. Anybody know one? One. Going once, going twice. Paul said, let not the sun, S-U-N, let not the sun go down upon your wrath. If you can't deal with it before the sun goes down, then either you got a problem or you need to go and work it out. We should never, never have the infighting that goes on in so many Christian circles. We can learn from Amasa, not only him, but also from his family. By the way, I left this point out. David, in spite of everything Amasa had done, extended mercy. In spite of everything that you and I do, God extends mercy. Instead of killing Amasa, David took him in, blessed him, gave him a job. No matter what you and I do, God extends